What just happened? What just happened? I knew that was coming, and it's still like it's just
Sorry.
a gut punch. Hi everyone. Welcome
Hi.
to the weekly MTG after show, where we are going to talk about a lot of what you just saw, plus preview some new cards, and obviously spend a little bit of time reacting to that drop at the end. I'm your host, Blake Rasmussen, but you're not here to see me. You're here to hear from some of the people who make the game. To my left, you can see Meris Malali, who will look a little familiar from the debut that you just
Yes.
watched. And then
Just saw me.
next to her, yeah, Dave Humphreys, who was one of the lead designers on this set and is going to tell you everything about the mechanics and how the cards get made. But first, I figured a little collective mourning as we all take a moment and pause and think about Tomio. Maris, what did we just see? What happened?
We saw the results of all of the experimentation that Jinga Taxius had been doing on Kamigawa, experimenting on commies, using the advanced technology that they had on the plane, and getting that reality chip. And we saw a Phyrexianized Planeswalker. Um, uh, Tomio, yeah, Tomio was Phyrexianized after the battle, and
What battle are
I'm
you
I'm
talking
still
about?
I'm still reacting to this. I've known this for months, and I'm still processing it. Um,
So we don't want to go
yeah,
into too many details about the story
yeah.
because where can people find out more about it, Maris?
MTGstory.com. We have all 5 episodes of the main Kamigawa story up. So if you haven't read any of the story and you just saw that big reveal, that is only one of the um, vibrant story beats in the story. So there's a lot that you
Mm-hmm.
can check out if you want to dig more into the details. But yeah, that was our
Yeah,
epilogue of the story.
that was yes. So there's actually a ton of story for people to dig into. If you saw that
Yeah.
moment or just like what happened, all 5 main stories are out. Plus, we have
Hmm.
some of the history of Kamagawa stories. If you were
Oh
watching
yes.
the beginning of the debut, all of those sagas were aligned with some of the saga stories that were published before that.
Yeah.
But let's
There's
also
also
let's.
oh
Oh, go ahead. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I would say there's also two a story and 2 episodes out of Kaido, our new planeswalker. So you get his
Yep.
origin story as well. So you yeah, basically Kamigawa history, Kaido history, Neon Dynasty main story.
Yep. Yeah, and it's we've even got more stories coming up, but we'll talk about that later.
Hmm. Yeah.
Let's keep going with Tomio. So we showed the Tomio card at the end. We only showed one version of it. Let's put
Hmm.
the 3 versions of Tomio up on the screen so that people can see Tomio completed Sage. So real quick, I'll just read off the card. It's a 5 mana planeswalker for 2, a green, a blue, a weird looking green blue Phyrexian symbol that Dave's going to talk about in a second. The ability completed, which again, we'll have Dave talk about that. Then the +1 ability, if you, I would stick with the left 2 cards if you want to read those, because that right one, a little
Hmm.
tough to read in Phyrexian. Tap up to 1
Hmm.
target artifact or creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. -X, exile target non-land permanent card with mana value X from your graveyard. Create a token that's a copy of that card. And -7, create Tamio's Notebook, a legendary colorless artifact token with spells you cast cost 2 less to cast and tap, draw a card. All right, Dave, what's going on with that weird looking mana symbol in the upper right hand corner?
Right. So this is, certainly a callback or using Phyrexian mana again in some fashion from new Phyrexia introduced it. Was certainly a big part of that set, and a lot of what the exciting stuff was with that set. It was also really powerful, right? So that, right, like in many cases, you would be paying the 2 life instead of the mana,
Mm-hmm.
unless it was sort of trivial to do so. So right, like we did a lot of brainstorming on like, yeah, what does it mean to be a Phyrexian planeswalker? Like, this needs to be a really special card. And we looked at all sorts of stuff, whether it was using poison or paying life or sacrificing creatures, or what was going to sort of give that Phyrexian feel here. And in the end, we went with, yeah, like, well, we can certainly do Phyrexian mana again here. And then, right, but the thing is, in terms of like, especially in case like we needed to reuse this mechanic, we wanted the choice to be more fun, so that if you're using the Phyrexian mana, that she would be entering with a lower loyalty value, so that there's more of a meaningful choice, right? Like a lot of times it would be, of course I'm going to spend less mana and get this thing on the board quicker, and so it creates a lot of fun, right? It's a modal card in some sense of a 4-mana card or a 5-mana card, and right, like we've seen in many cases how strong modal cards can be just in terms of filling out your curve where you want to.
Yep. And so I am going to hold most questions till the end of chat. We have a Q&A section at the end, but since we're all mourning Tomio collectively, I'll ask a few questions as they come up. But Dave, is this the only card in this set with the ability completed?
Yes.
Okay. Interesting. Good to know. All right. Well, let's now focus on some of Tomio's abilities, because I know when you're all designing planeswalkers, there's a lot of knobs and things you can twist and turn. How did you land on this suite of abilities? To me, they look like kind of classic Tomio abilities with a twist.
Yeah, right. Certainly in the past, she'd referenced tap creatures and on her original card from Avacyn Restored. I guess I should know. So right, there was that. I mean, the second ability is a little bit more new for her, from what I can remember. I think there's a lot of fun stuff to do in all sorts of formats with tokens. The fact that that's a token has a lot of interesting interactions. And then finally, like the kind of the ultimate, I was just always really attached to in terms of just referring to how much really she's so much about like gaining knowledge and learning things. And we've also seen her notebook before in the past, and that felt like like what would having that appear here again felt like it would be really fun.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. And then Meris, can we put the versions back up? Can you tell us a little bit about the different versions, the art, the style, all that?
Yes. So as you probably saw from the debut video, there's a lot of different versions of all different cards. So we had a nice little grid at one point to help us keep it all straight. So we have the one on the far left is our Tamiyo completed Sage. It looks like a normal, regular, a Planeswalker card you've seen, with a little bit of details on the edges that make it feel a little bit sharper and a little bit Phyrexian. Then there is the borderless Planeswalker treatment that has an alternate art style. These, as we, these alternate Planeswalkers in borderless style were done through a partnership with Hokuto Studios. And then on the far right, we have a card that frame and art-wise looks just like the regular card, except it has been translated or localized into Phyrexian. And we have we have a team kind of within the studio and within Wizards who are effectively our internal Phyrexian experts. So this is translated into Phyrexian.
Yeah, it's an actual language that you can decipher, and there's a number of these cards out there now to give people clues on what means what, and we've certainly seen people sleuthing how to translate these cards. They're kind of like little Rosetta Stones, each and every one.
I believe that the Vorinclex had a Phyrexian version in Call Time.
Yep. And it did. Dave, question from chat. So the Tomio's Notebook token, is that a token that people will be able to open in this set?
Yeah, there will be a token with art and all. Yeah, and I think it's also worth noting there that, like, this is a little bit different than normal in that it's not an emblem. You might expect an emblem sort of in the slot, but like by having it be a card that people could interact with, still it meant we could also juice it up a little more.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, I'm not gonna linger on Tomio because it's just gonna bring down the mood. We're all gonna get a little sad. Although we have seen some Phyrexian fans out there
Yes.
celebrating, saying Tomio's now one of us. And you know what?
I'm
Have your
waiting
moment in the
for
sun.
I'm waiting for the we don't talk about Tamiyo no 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 songs now. Um,
All right, well, we're going to move on to some other previews because we have several other previews on this stream. The first batch are the batch of promos. Now, some of these were on the stream, some of them were not, but they're all kind of the promos that you can get during the Neo season. That come in the promo pack. So we're going to show off, there's 5 of these. We're going to go through them sort of one by one. We're going to start off with Jukai Naturalist. So this is a 2/2 for green and a white enchantment creature human monk. It has a lifelink, and enchantment spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. And then you see the promo version there on the right. And then kind of the flip side of that is Enthusiastic Mechnaut. Let me put that up on the screen. There it is. Artifact creature, Goblin Artificer, also a 2/2. This one has flying, and it costs a blue and a red. And its artifact spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. So, Meris, let's start with you because these two mirrors of each other speak to sort of a theme in the world of Kamagawa.
yeah, it was like we talked about in the debut video. Um, there's a range of kind of how people on Kamigawa are approaching technology and their spiritual lives, like and how they interact with that in their day to day. Some folks are um, very resistant to technology. You can never get them to check their email. Others are really interested in um, getting the latest technology into as many hands as possible to kind of to benefit the populace. And then other folks are like, how do we regulate the technology? How do we make sure it's safe before we give it out to people, and also maintain you know, aspects of the world that we don't want, traditions that we don't want to disappear. So these are kind of two of the multiple perspectives on how to embrace technology in your life. This goblin is definitely like, I'm just gonna fly everywhere.
Dave, how does that theme play out in the set?
Right, so we actually rely on this a lot mechanically in the set. So sort of like there is a spectrum again from the technology side to the more traditional side. The spectrum sort of goes blue to red to black to white to green, which then is reflected also in the color pairs. Where so yeah, blue and red are the most about artifacts in the set as a where we most rely on sort of the expression of technology. I mean, there's again also you'll find like really traditional equipment and things like that too. But for the most part, like blue and red are where the artifacts and artifact matters stuff is centered, which is reflective of the blue red card here, where yeah, like those decks want to have a lot of artifacts entering the battlefield and doing stuff, and you're getting rewards, and so that yeah, the blue red color pair is largely about artifacts. Meanwhile, sort of yeah, the other end of the spectrum then green white is about enchantments. You know, as we'll be getting to with sagas and all sorts of other stuff, where yeah, the green white is very enchantment centric, and meanwhile we do have, you know, I'll just mention like black white as a color pair is about trying to strike a balance of having an artifact and an enchantment. So you know, it's not necessarily again just a two-sided conflict. There's there's a lot of color pairs doing different things.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, let's show one of the cards that helps fix mana for some of those color pairs. The next promo is Secluded Courtyard. So this is a land that when it enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. It can tap to add a colorless mana, or it can tap to add 1 mana of any color that you can spend only to cast a creature of the chosen type, or activate an ability of the creature or creature card of the chosen type. So, Dave, we've seen effects like this before. What role does this play in Kamagawa?
Yeah. I mean, I think what Unclaimed Territory and some others have been really popular cards. I think cards like these have a very good role in supporting tribal decks, and, especially in Standard and in other formats. I think
Hmm.
these really help improve metagames in those places. Right, this goes one step further in working. We wanted this to work with ninjutsu and with channel in the set, so that's sort of the why you're seeing the extra, maybe a little bit confusing extra lines of text. But yeah, that you can be using you can be using these creatures from other places like your hand.
Gotcha. So
Yeah.
if you choose ninja as the creature type, you can use this to activate ninjutsu.
Right, because it's a creature card. Yep.
Got it. All right.
And you're
Well, let's move
seeing
on.
there
Oh,
the
go ahead.
sorry.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, and you're seeing there the one of the courtyard in the Eiganjo Imperial
Hmm.
Palace.
Yeah. With some pretty fantastic Sam Burley art there.
Oh yeah.
All
Mhm.
right. Next up, this one's gonna be a favorite and probably get memed a little bit, and that's
Mhm.
because it's such a good boy. Spirited
Oh yes.
Companion is a 1/1 for 1 and a white enchantment creature dog. When Spirited Companion enters the battlefield, draw a card. Uh, that's it. Simple enchantment creature. Dave, this looks a lot like Elvish Visionary.
It does. Yeah, it's also an enchantment, which is pretty noteworthy for some of the things I've been talking about. But yeah, we right. So this is sort of you've seen sort of hints of this, especially like in AFR and Midnight Hunt, where yeah, we'd sort of been putting some lower in the curve creatures that draw a card when they enter the battlefield. What in AFR like the
Mm-hmm.
priest and the guard, I think in Midnight Hunt. Right, so this is sort of an extension on that, where really like one of white's strengths is supposed to be about playing a bunch of good early creatures. One downfall in that sort of strategy is that you can just run out of steam, right? That you like, oh, like I played up my hand, I have nothing to do now. So right, having this as a tool for white, we felt was really important in playing up what are supposed to be white strengths. And so yeah, we want cards like this to be appearing in white now.
Yeah. And Maris, tell us a little bit about the dog.
I mean, ever since we've moved to make all hounds dogs, I think the teams have been trying to figure out how to get dogs into every set where we can. At one point, actually, in early world building, we were um, talking about various uh, creature types and different cultures or different groups that we might want to represent. And there was an early idea of like maybe there's Shiba folk, like there's Kitsune that are kind of, but then we moved
Hmm.
away from that, but still wanted to have some Shibus in the set. So that is part of the origin of Spirited Companion.
All right.
And it's just, yeah,
Um,
more cute
it's
dogs for
just
my
it's
dad.
just it's so cute. It's adorable.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see this one going in a lot of decks. All right.
Hmm.
Next up, we got a ninja that I believe was in the debut, Silver Fur Master. This is going to be one of the promos again of the set. So the promo is on the far right. You can see the ninja frame in the second. So we saw Silver Fur Master earlier, but let's read it off. It is a 2/2 for a blue and a black creature, Rat Ninja, which has ninjutsu for a blue and a black. And ninjutsu abilities you activate cost 1 less to activate, and other ninja and rogue creatures you control get +1/+1. So, Dave, this is a great spot for you to talk about the return of ninjutsu and its role in the set as well.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it was just one of the more popular, memorable mechanics from the original block. Actually, as Vision handed off, it wasn't in the set. Some of that was just because it was a little tricky in terms of how it worked with modified. Right. That you're
Mm-hmm.
giving up modifications if you're doing this, but we tried a lot of variants and like yeah, where maybe you could keep those and whatever. Like at the end we are like, you know what, this just still really works really well in the set even, and despite that. And right, the gameplay, you get to do some stuff that's really kind of there's so many tricks to be done with this. Right, the play pattern's great in terms of like, yeah, you're trying to get a creature through, and then like surprise, you got this this ninja landing on the battlefield, like for example, this one can help like your creatures that was blocked, and in a way like, oh, you think you've made good blocks, but actually all my stuff's bigger now. And there's just a lot of stuff to do in terms of, right, like you get to feel sneaky and smart, and yeah, it's a fun, lovable mechanic, and I'm glad we brought it back here.
Yeah, return a spirited companion to your hand, and play.
Yeah. They're definitely good with enters the battlefield effects. Good with lots of stuff.
All right, so let's move on to our next preview. I saw a couple people in chat call out that we put Unspeakable in there. Those who recognize that name will recognize it from the original Kamagawa. So, yeah, this is the Unspeakable from the original Kamagawa. What was this thing, Meris?
It is a kami that kind of knows the deepest secrets of the world. The knowledge is meant to be off limits to mortals, and the kind of for folks who go seeking that forbidden knowledge, eventually they will call this unspeakable kami to them, and it will drive them to madness, drive them to lose themselves in that pursuit of forbidden knowledge. In the original Kamigawa, this card would come out if you played, I think, 3 arcane instants. And while the Unspeakable and Arcane wasn't in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, there was a short story from the original Kamigawa block that kind of talked about a character who was involved with the Unspeakable, and some students who were tricked and trapped into releasing it. And that's the story that we decided to depict in this set.
Okay. Now, Dave, this is not our way of saying we're bringing back Arcane, right?
No, not in the set.
But like a lot of things from original Kamagawa, we are nodding to it. So our nod to the Unspeakable is a saga. So we can put that up on the screen. So Behold the Unspeakable. It is a 5-mana enchantment, 3 blue. It's an uncommon. The first chapter is creatures you don't control get -2/-0 until your next turn. The second is if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand, draw 4 cards. Otherwise, scry 2, then draw 2 cards. And then the third is to exile this saga, then return it to the battlefield transformed under your control, where it becomes a Vision of the Unspeakable, a 0/0 flying trampler, which gets +1/+1 for each card in your hand. So, Meris, what's the story that's being told here?
It is basically, I mean, well, the short story that it is inspired by was these students who have heard about this knowledge and this kami, and they go into a library to look for it, and they eventually find it and become trapped. The flavor text on the back references Azami, and she was actually one of the teachers of the students. And even though she appears to be discouraging the students from seeking this knowledge, actually, Azami has has a whole setup where she wants that knowledge. She's trying to bring about the unspeakable without personally going through the spells and the knowledge that would cause you to lose yourself.
Yeah. Best comment in chat. I can't believe you're speaking about this. Dave,
I'm not gonna be. You're not gonna be able to get a hold of me for the rest of the day.
Nurse was like, I don't know if I should say anything.
Yeah.
Okay, Dave, this saga, like a lot of the ones we've seen so far, has been uncommon, or is uncommon. So why are the sagas spread across? Typically we've seen sagas pretty concentrated. There seem to be a lot. They seem to be spread across all rarities. What's going on there?
Yeah, so well, for one, I'm a bit of a sucker for sagas. Like I led Dominaria and Kaldheim, and yeah, I'll take them whenever I can get them. Yeah, and I love the twist here. I mean, I love the twist here so much in terms of the stories coming to life that, right? I pitched that. I mean, one of my other, I guess, things I've been doing a lot is one per pack, and yeah, so the goal was to get enough of these that we could have one show up in every pack. So
Hmm.
yeah, like I made sure we had a lot. I mean, also at the same time, right? Like in terms of representing the traditional side, I felt, like what better way to show off kind of like the traditional side of stuff than, with storytelling and enchantments mechanically in terms of how I was alluding to earlier. So yeah, I love, like, yeah, you can sort of, the cards themselves can speak so well to, like at least whatever story might even come across your mind in terms of, like, whether, the first story is being scared and the second story, chapter is kind of like letting go to get more, whatever, like there are a lot of stories you can tell yourself. They're really fun to work with and trying to be evocative of things from the previous block, since that was also one of our major goals.
Hmm. Now, did I hear in there you get one of these per pack?
Yeah, at least one, since you can probably end up with some variants, but yeah, that's the hope.
Okay, very cool.
And just
All
a
right.
reminder plug for those, n- for some of our sagas, there are stories that have
Hmm.
been shared and posted on the Daily MTG
Yeah, yeah,
website.
and they
So,
really they really bridge the gap. And I know, Maris, you and
mhm,
your team, picked
yeah,
these sagas specifically because they bridge the gap from 1,200
hmm,
years ago when the Dragon Kami War started,
yeah,
to modern day, basically. So it's a really good way
yeah,
for people to kind of catch up on what's happened in Kamagawa over
hmm,
the years.
yeah. And it was all
Um,
a lot of it was stuff we had to figure out
yeah.
to explain why is the Kamigawa of Neon Dynasty the way it is.
Hmm.
So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I imagine. Dave, I did want to dig into on the sagas. Where did the concept of making them transforming come from?
Yeah, so that came from sometime, I assume, either an exploratory or vision. It was an idea that came pretty early. So more or less than I was just trying to execute on those things from when I was leading the set. I mean, there were tough decisions to be made. Like one of the decisions that we made very late in the set was actually to have them exile and return transform rather than just transform. We
Hmm.
were finding that there was just too much pressure on your opponent if they effectively all had, like, haste, kind of. Right, that there wasn't a turn window where you could use sorcery speed creature removal on them. So that was one thing we changed towards the end, which, like, right, then that allows us to make the creatures stronger. It lets us make the first two chapters stronger in return,
Hmm.
and just, yeah, have them be more interactable, which is usually good.
Mhm. And
Okay.
there's
Well, I mean
usually
that.
people who are associated with with a saga and a legend. Um, so which is, I guess, technically true for any plane that has sagas, but that
Mhm.
was a nice way also to call back to legends or characters who now aren't alive, but you still
Right.
might see a mention of them,
Yeah.
if you were a fan.
Yeah. Yeah. And then actually, that's a great raises a great question, Dave. So are they all transforming into creatures, or are there any variations of that?
I don't think I'm forgetting anything.
Kind of
I
putting you
believe
on the
they're all
spot.
creatures. Yeah,
Okay. If not, we won't hold you to that. But
yeah.
all right.
I was thinking of some other set or something.
No, no. Okay, so next we're going to move on to our last preview. Before we get to
Mhm.
that, I have been grabbing some questions that people have been putting in chat, but you've all been quite restrained since I said Q&A at the end. But if you want to start putting questions in chat, go ahead and do so. It helps if you tag at Magic, or just put my name in it or
Mhm.
something like that. I'm grabbing as many as I can, and then we will, in that Q&A section, just throw questions at Maris and Dave
No, no.
and see what they can answer. Uh, so this next card is one of my favorite cards in the set. I played during original Kamigawa, and this is kind of a callback to one of my favorite cards at that point. Uh, so we are going to show off Tameshi Reality Architect. So here's the
Mhm.
three versions of Tameshi. Tameshi Reality Architect is a legendary creature moonfolk wizard. and it costs 2 and a blue. And whenever one or more non-creature permanents are returned to hand, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn, and then it has an ability X and a white. Return a land you control to its owner's hand. Return target artifact or enchantment card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. Meris, let's start with you. Who is Tameshi?
Tameshi is a moonfolk scientist with the Seiba Futurists, and he's really interested in studying how Kami bridge the mortal and spirit realm. Kind of like how does it help? How does it help understand the reality that we all live in? He's also, trying to manage spoilers for people who haven't dug in deep to the story. But he's a friend and mentor to Kaito, our new Ninja Planeswalker. And he's also, you can see in his hands, he is the creator of the reality chip, which is a important artifact to the story and part of used in Tamiyo's completion. So he's gotten involved with Tezzeret in the story, but he's by all accounts a very smart guy.
Yeah.
Um,
And this is a throwback to a character from original Kamagawa, correct?
I mean, there are some similarities with Moloku, right? Again, at least in terms of like they share an artist, so there's that familiarity. But yes,
Loku the
both
Clouded
done
Mirror.
by
Yeah,
Scott
this
and
card
Fisher.
was a powerful
yes.
and very popular card back in the day.
Right. The first paragraph of the card we're previewing, yeah, it certainly is meant to work with all the return of land you control to its owner's hand. Right. The trigger is keen off the fact that almost all the Moonfolk had had an ability to do that for some various effect, and this is also then providing a new effect. Also for using white mana, which is a little bit new. I mean, I think it is worth noting that the original block, I think, had 102 commanders, and only one of them was multicolored commander. So I certainly was looking for ways to, for people that love that setting, to give them more options for multicolored commanders where possible.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, and the other thing I want to point out here is, so Maris, typically in previous sets, when a rare mythic gets a special treatment, it doesn't also get the extended treatment. We have 3 different treatments here.
Yes.
What's going on in this set with that?
So remember that grid of treatments I mentioned? So what we did with Neo was, as you noted, normally it's the rares and mythics that don't get a special treatment. But in Neo, every rare and mythic has a special treatment. The ninjas have a ninja frame. The samurai have a samurai frame. There is, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting one. There's this neon frame, and for kind of the other legends that are more just kind of futuristic. And so if we took everything that doesn't get a special treatment or will get, if we took the normal approach, nothing would have had an extended frame. And we love the extended art. We know players love the extended art. So we just made the call, okay, let's just, in this circumstance, double up. So every rare and mythic will have the extended art. And then also there is these fun alternate frame and art versions.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have a ton of questions in chat, really good ones. So we're gonna jump to our Q&A section. We've got a bunch of questions. I'm going to give priority to questions, of course, that are about Kamigawa and Neon Dynasty. I do see some other questions about Arena, about esports, and if we have time, I may address those. But we're going to definitely, Kamigawa is our focus, so we're going to spend some time on that. So let's start. We said this earlier in the stream, but it's worth calling out Meris. When can we read
Yes.
about Tomio turning Phyrexian?
Right now. I mean, we'd love you to stay with us, but you can open up your web browser, go to MTG Story, and episode 5 of the Neon Dynasty main story is up. Actually, all 5 episodes are up. So if you haven't read episodes 1 through 4 and you would like to, I would encourage you to do those as well. But if you really just want to read the about Tomio's completion, episode 5.
Skip to the end, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to skip to the end, no judgment. If you're one of the people that read the end of the book first, just find out if you want to read the rest of it. You can start with episode 5, but I highly recommend the whole thing.
The recommendation. All right. Next up, so I'm kind of taking these questions just in the order that I wrote them down. So I apologize if I skip over anyone, but we're going to get through as much as we can. Dave, what are the draft archetypes in this set?
All right, let's see if I can do this off the top of my head. White blue is about vehicles. Blue black is ninjas and rogues. I guess I didn't mention, like, we did batch together rogues with ninjas for backwards compatibility. Black red is about artifacts and like sacrificing artifacts. Red green is about modified. Green white is about enchantments. White red is about samurai and warrior batched together similarly. Black white is about having sort of a balance of having an artifact and enchantment. Blue green is about kind of channel and ramp, right? So where channel is kind of used as a smoothing mechanic here. So right, you can have big spells that you can kind of channel away for other effects, but that means you can play more of them so that you can kind of play a deck that's trying to ramp up to bigger stuff and still have stuff to do if you get an awkward draw. What do I have left? Red blue is about artifacts and artifacts entering the battlefield. Black green is kind of a recursive strategy. It's kind of like a bunch of ways to regrow things, way to return creatures from the graveyard back to hand. It's kind of an attrition-y, recursive-y sort of deck. And I think, did I get them all? I hope.
Maybe. Entirely possible you did.
We need a wheel so that as we're going through this, we know
that one down.
Yeah. That one down. Yeah.
All right. I'll take this next question. I saw several people asking when the cinematic trailer was going to drop. Look for that closer to the digital release. So I'll just run through some of the dates. Right now, we are at the start of previews. So today's January 27th. Previews will run through February 5th. We'll actually have Commander previews on the Monday after the 5th. And then the digital launch is February 10th. The pre-release is February 11th through 17th, and then the tabletop release is February 18th. So look for the cinematic trailer a little closer to February 10th. Dave, there are a bunch of questions about Samurai. People asking for the themes, mechanics, Samurai in this set. So what's sort of the mechanical identity of Samurai in this set?
It's a good question. Yeah, so the main theme and sort of, right, we're not using Bushido, I will tell you that. There's like maybe one card that sort of references it without the naming it as such. Right, the main identity here is, it came from a starting place in a mechanic I'd wanted to do for a while, actually, which is sort of using Exalted as a basis. Like I like how Exalted plays. Exalted always gives you +1/+1 till end of turn. I felt for a while that I'd love to see, like, well, what if you get a different reward? What if each card, rather than giving you that same bonus, could give you a different bonus? So that was sort of the starting place of it. So Samurais and warriors are all about attacking with one creature, and a lot of them have a text that say if you attack with exactly one, if you attack with exactly one samurai or warrior, then you get some bonus. Whether it could be like discarding and drawing, it could be returning an artifact, it could be tapping a creature. Like there's all sorts of many varied things that you can do, and then like it becomes kind of this fun game of which effect do you kind of put at risk, which effect do you try to get multiple uses out of. It's not necessarily about like, it's nice to do stuff that's different than like white red's just all about go wide and attack with everything like we often do. This is a little bit more precision controlled attacking that kind of felt flavorful here, and like a nice twist on stuff we do. And as I said, I'm just big fan of stuff in the Exalted space.
Very cool. All right, let's talk about some previous mechanics from old Kamagawa. So here's one specifically. I'm a huge fan of Splice. Did you try to put it in the set? And if so, when did it get cut and why? And I saw, Dave, I'll just kind of ask this generally. We saw a couple other questions about other mechanics from original Kamagawa. Were there mechanics from the original block that you attempted to bring in or thought about? What was the thought process there?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them were looked at. I think actually Mark Rosewater's article, which is actually, probably going up soon. I think touches on, or maybe it's in his next week one, but he does touch on a lot of, I think he touches on every single mechanic that was in the original block and sort of why we did or did not look into using it. I did not personally, in terms of when I took over with set design, I didn't explore a whole lot of things. I mean, I feel like we at least briefly discussed all of them, which is again, like sort of how we got to including ninjutsu again and things like that. But a lot of things were pretty narrow and quite frankly not that popular in terms of like the in terms of the studies that we put out and surveys we've done with people. So and or risky in certain sorts of ways. I mean, we tried to rely more on callbacks. Like there are a lot of cycles in the set that are calling back to cool and popular things, like including even things like shoals and whatever that are kind of risky. They're not quite them, but they're definitely a callback to that. And there's a lot, whether it's the dragons, the shrines, the legendary lands, there's a lot of callbacks, which is more where we went to rather than trying to bring back mechanics that still in many cases needed some work.
Fair enough. Meris, how'd you come to the decision to Phyrexianize planeswalkers? And why do you hate Tomio? I threw in that last part. That wasn't the question.
I mean, but that is an unspoken question that people are also asking. Gosh, I wish I could remember the exact moment that we came to that decision. There are many things.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah, like 2019. That was 2 years or 20 years ago.
I was gonna say, I remember walking by. We have an art concept wall up down on the 3rd floor, and I remember seeing a Phyrexianized Planeswalker on there for the first time years ago, and just like my jaw dropping. And I knew it was a concept at that point. It wasn't like completely solidified, but it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of plays into like, it starts with like, well, what if we did this or what if we did that, and then a speculative idea finds a home in a set where, we want to include Jin-Gataxias, and and then we have some story ideas, and then suddenly it's like, well, narratively, you've all just met Kaido. Narrative, like, so there's I say this knowing that every planeswalker is somebody's favorite. And so to the Tomio fans, my heart is truly with you. There is also the acknowledgement, like, because Tomio has history and they're looking at larger narrative things and what emotional impact, and also what does this mean? Like, she has, what is in that notebook? What are in her scrolls? Like, what does that give Phyrexia? And it was not easy. It was not a light decision. We debated it long until we were like, well, at this point the cards have shipped. We can't debate this anymore.
The meeting last week about should we do this was probably a little bit late.
But I think it's an exciting, like, what weird mechanical fleshy doors has this opened?
Makes sense. All right, I'm going to take a real quick break from the Kamagawa questions to get the two most common questions I'm seeing in the stream. Just to answer them. Are there any Q&A or news for organized play that I can share? The plan is taking shape, and we have a date that we are planning to announce everything. I'm not going to announce an announcement right now, but it is all moving towards an announcement sometime relatively soon. And then as for all the questions about the arena economy stream, I said this on stream last week, so it's not actually new information, but we're waiting till after Kamagawa and Neon Dynasty for the arena team to do some more review of everything that's going on, gather some more data. But it is something that we have had internal conversations about, so we have heard the conversations and feedback and are discussing. Okay, back to Kamagawa. Let's see. Here's a pretty quick and simple question. Let's go with you, Dave. How many planeswalkers are in the set?
Am I really allowed to say? I think you've seen them all now. I think there are 4.
Yeah.
You are allowed to say.
I've seen them all.
Yeah.
If you wouldn't ask me if I wasn't allowed to say, really, right?
Yeah, I'm not going to ask you questions you can't answer.
I had seen a question about enchantment creatures.
Go ahead.
When we were showing our good dog, I think there was some questions about like the enchantment creatures and why is this dog an enchantment creature? We took the approach that in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, mortals that have a connection with Kami are filling that enchantment creature space, and so I'd be able to identify effectively like a Kami bonded creature because you'll see little spirit floaties around them. So here you have the little tied decorative knot Kami playing with the dog, which give it, that's its little signifier.
Okay.
Instead of a Nyx field on Theros.
That makes sense. Yeah, and the flavor text talks about it too, with they're forming a little pack with some spirits. It's very adorable.
Yeah.
Meris, while we're with you, here's a question I've seen a lot.
Hello.
Did you create a specific set of symbols to evoke kanji in the artwork?
We created a specific set of symbols that don't specifically correlate to any language or alphabet or phonetics, but we wanted to have some kind of writing. I mean, in every plane, there has to be some kind of writing, and especially as we were doing original concept art, and we're like, well, we've got these kind of streets, and there's signs, and there's neon signs, there's street vendors have their little banners. Well, something's got to be written on them. So yeah, we similarly to how we made kind of rune lettering for Kaldheim that also doesn't translate to any specific language. It's just like something that feels like the world that has our real world that has inspired the setting without actually being that language.
Gotcha.
So for those of you who like it, you can put it in whatever order you want. It doesn't mean anything.
A lot of people are closing their notebooks, kind of like, oh,
I know.
I was gonna get this.
You can translate Phyrexian. You can't translate Kamigawa.
Yes, they've got their hands full with Phyrexian, believe me.
Yeah.
All right, let's move to Dave. Can we look forward to more Dimir rogues in this set?
There are rogues. I mean, certainly this is the rare occasion where we can have a lot of ninjas. So using a slot that could be a ninja to be a rogue is not necessarily the best deployment of stuff, right? Like we wanted to get all the ninjas and get all, similarly all the samurai we could here. I mean, there are certainly some number of creatures that are, again, the warrior rogues here, just in terms of making things make a little bit of sense in terms of the batching, but there's not a lot of other rogues in the set.
Okay.
And those can play nicely with some of our other rogue and warriors decks that we've got.
Yeah. Dave, let's stick with you. Does the set have uncommon legendary creatures?
Yes. Yeah, it's tricky. Like a lot of the signposts ended up not being legendary in the end, but yeah, there are some. I'm pretty confident. I've lost track now how many, but
I
yes.
can visually see you like scrolling through the card file as you're like,
Well, there's a very
yes.
important pair. There's a very important pair of legendary uncommons that I can remember of, which makes me more confident in this.
All right.
The
That might
sisters,
be
as
that
it were.
might be a clue. All right. Let's Maris, this I think is a question for you.
Okay.
How are the Kitsunes adapting to this neon technology? Are they taking advantage of anything they can get from tech and embracing it, like cunning foxes, or are they falling back on their spirituality and pushing against it?
Uh, most of the kitsune that I can think of are associated with the imperial court. Um, I'm sure somebody will be like, I found one that's not in the imperial court. So, asterisks by what I'm saying. But the
Mm-hmm.
most of the ones I can remember are in the imperial court, and that group is um, kind of it is welcoming technology after it's been like uh, gone through the red tape and the bureaucracy of like, is this safe? Is this the how do we want to share this? How do we want to control it? How do we want to get it out to our people? Imperial Court's kind of the group of balance, at least flavor wise, and in the story for how they're approaching technology. And so that's a little bit of how I think we positioned the Kitsune. So um, they are adapting with you know, they're being diligent.
All right. Next up, let's do. So I've gotten a couple questions about reconfigure and equip, and just kind of some general questions about reconfigure. And we haven't really talked about that on this stream. The debut talked about reconfigure a little bit. But Dave, can you first of all tell everyone what reconfigure is, and maybe producer Sean can find a card that we can throw up on screen. What reconfigure is, and what sort of role it's playing in Kamigawa.
Right. So it's in many ways the complement to sagas that are turning into creatures. Right. This is meant to be kind of the new thing representing the technology side of stuff. Where this is kind of our artifact mechanic. Right. So that these are artifact creatures that can also act as equipment. Right. They don't have
Mm-hmm.
an equip cost, but they have a reconfigure cost, which is very similar. Although your cards that say reduce your equip cost and stuff don't apply. But right, that these right so far you haven't seen that many of them, so it gets tricky. So like in many
Yeah.
cases, like this is a rare, it's doing something pretty special in many cases. Right, like you can imagine like your creature, if it's a 2/2, might say be granting the equipped creature +2/+2, and that's as this card shows, that's not always the case. But right, that these will in many cases be behaving more like creatures that can also just serve as equipment and do things that you'd normally expect an equipment to do. This is a bit of a fun oddball. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I really loved what this did in terms of like, I think, right, like one of the big limitations or feel bads of equipment is like you fill a deck with equipment, you draw a bunch of equipment, you don't draw any of your creatures in a given game or whatever, and just feels kind of bad. So these, right, these mean that you don't have to worry about kind of like piece A and piece B coming together. Like if you jam all these a bunch of decks, you're going to have creatures, you're going to have and some of them can be equipment, and you can still do that thing, and it's going to work. And at the same time, like equipment can also be kind of frustrating because a lot of people don't necessarily have cards in their deck that are going to answer equipment. But these will almost, I mean, these are going to enter as creatures. There's going to be a window where you can try to destroy them as a creature. If you equip them to a creature, you can destroy the creature that it's on, and then have a chance to destroy the the reconfigured creature once it's a creature again. So right, like it's just I actually love how these come together and kind of dealing with like some of the most frustrating things about equipment. And just creatively, I just think it's really cool. Like that, yeah, these are creatures that can then like they can be your sword or your shoulder armor or some other part of your armor or just a helmet or whatever. It's just yeah, I don't know, like even just in terms of like kind of going towards a slightly cyborg angle or whatever, it just felt really
Hmm.
fun and flavorful for this world.
All
Yeah.
right. Very cool.
And I guess I should say, like, yeah, I guess I didn't really touch. So, like, certainly you can also, like, have it hop on and then have it, like, you can spend the reconfigure cost to take it off, which is at least a little bit different from equipment in some sense. But yeah, then it's also like a creature that you can block with that same turn, because when your creature's attacking with a, an equipped reconfigure creature, like the equipped creature isn't becoming tapped while you attack or anything like that, so it can kind of hop off and block, and then the next turn hop on and block again. But you can only do it at sorcery, so it's not like, I don't know, not too much like on the board tricksy stuff.
Yeah.
Can you
and if you're
put
old like me, oh, go ahead.
I was saying, can you put multiple of those on? And
Yep.
or is it? Yep.
Yeah, you can stack a whole bunch of stuff on if that's what you want to do, and it ties into modified in terms of right, like modified is looking at like auras. Again, auras are sort of on the traditional side of, like, enchantments, and again, these are how you're doing keying into the modification text of other cards, since, like, you can be equipping these, and it's pretty easy to put them in, include them in your deck.
Yeah.
So start thinking about ways everyone wants to put stuff on the dog.
Yeah. A dog with a reality chip. Yeah, these as I've been talking to people about these, if you're old like me, they feel like lizards, but they actually work.
Yeah, they are like, instead of an enchant mini version, they have a fair bit of overlap with lizards. Hopefully a lot more easy to deal with than process than lizards, because at least with that rule set at that time, they were kind of complicated.
They were very complicated. It's from Tempest. That's a long time ago. Anyway, we got it a little better this time.
Like damage on stack, all that sort of stuff.
Oh God. Next up, what will be added to the list for the set to look out for in set boosters? We will be sharing that on Daily MTG towards the end of previews. I can look up the exact date, but it's towards the end of previews. Speaking of, the next question, when will we have more previews? So the way it works is we have previews start today, and they run through the 5th. If you actually head to dailymtg.com, there's an article that says where to find Kamagawa Neon Dynasty previews, and that gives you a full list with dates and links, and it'll tell you where to find everything for the whole preview season.
Yep.
Let's see. I think we've talked about why there are enchantment creatures in the set. Dave, since the shrine creatures are shrine type, do changelings now count towards the shrine count?
Rules questions. Rules not my specialty. I think they actually don't really have a creature type, right? Like, I think shrine is an enchantment type. And so, if I'm not mistaken, I don't even think these have a creature type. But someone more knowledgeable will listen.
Sean, do you have one?
We'll have someone on the rules team. We did show a shrine in the debut video. We'll have someone on the rules team maybe weigh in on that. Here's one. You know what? Sometimes it's also nice to talk about the just comments. So, big thanks to the Neon Dynasty story. It's the best Magic story ever. So compliments to everyone Meris was working with on that.
There's a good team of people on it.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys are enjoying it.
Dave, there are 3 blue planeswalkers in the set, which is a lot. How did that happen?
Well, I can mostly just speak to the process, right? So, right, the process is, there are a bunch of people on both creative and R&D that end up weighing in on, right? Like, we have like a planeswalker grid of, like, these are all the things coming in upcoming sets, and when this rotates, when we have this rotation, we'll still have enough blue planeswalkers or red planeswalkers, or etc. So there's a grid. Creative and R&D are both, weighing in their own needs to try to, make sure we have the right balance of stuff for standard, and that we're going to be able to hit on the right, like, this is who we want to be kind of a headliner for this set creatively and things like that. And so it was all accounted for. I don't I can't speak too much to, like, that ultimately that is how we ended up, right? We wanted these characters for this setting, and we made the appropriate plans before and afterwards to make sure it would work out fine.
All right. We are just about out of time, so I'm going to do 2
quick questions that I think we can get through in the last 2 minutes. The first was a popular request. Can we get the Kamagawa lo-fi girl music and image for a 10-hour version, please? We were pleasantly surprised by how much people liked the countdown music and the image, and we're discussing maybe getting a wallpaper. And I think there might be a playlist with that music on it that we can dig up. But yeah, we're pretty happy people like that, and we'll see if we can get it out to people. It was pretty enjoyable. All right, final question before we close. Dave, are there ninjas in colors other than blue and black?
Yes.
Great. There you have it, folks. All right. Meris, Dave, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge about Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Reminder, previews are going on right now. And if you want to know the story behind Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, that is all available right now as well. Head to mtgstory.com. If you're interested in card previews, head to dailymtg.com and look for the Where to Find Kamigawa Neon Dynasty previews article. There we go, words in order. That is happening this week and next. There's a ton of cool stuff coming. For the set, we've got the digital launch on Magic Gathering Arena and Magic Gathering Online on February 10th. Tabletop pre-releases run February 11th through 17th. Check with your local game store about how they're running those. Some are running remote pre-releases, or you can kind of pick it up and go. Some are running in person, but obviously check with your local game store. And then the tabletop global release is February 18th for Kamagawa Neon Dynasty. So thank you, everyone, for joining us on this stream. Apologies to everyone whose questions we didn't quite get to, but we appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next week.
Yeah. Thanks for having us.
Thanks.